Uh, so today I was talking about New Year's. So what New Year's traditions do you guys do, if any? You have plans for this New Year's? No? Going to a party? A vision board. Okay, I've not heard of that. So for plans for visions for the new year? Yeah. Uh, so the one of the themes for today is about the differences between how we celebrate not just how we celebrate New Year's, but how we view time going forwards at all. So um, New Year's, even in different cultures, happens at different times. So the Jewish New Year was this past was happened already in September. That was Rosh Hashanah, and there's a set of rituals around that. The Chinese and Korean New Year's is coming up in mid-February, so that's the 17th. In Korea, it's called Solal, and they celebrate by everyone comes back. It's a big family celebration for like 3 days. It's more like Thanksgiving than our New Year's. They all everyone comes back to the to home and celebrates with a big feast. And the real meaning of Solal is actually Age Day, because that's another way that counting is different. Not only do you have the years coming at different times, but you measure about how you get older. So everyone gets older on New Year's in Korean tradition. You start at age 1, because normally normal people start counting at 1. So the tradition is 1, and then every New Year's you get a year older. So it's also like a birthday for everyone. So you can think of having your birthday and New Year's where you get to be a year older at on New Year's. So so now I'll think about how it's all different about how we look forwards into the future and mark each new year. We'll now say we'll now have the time for prayer. Spirit of love, we collect these offerings to continue to do this work of our congregation, organizing, letter writing, caring for the sick and grieving among us, contributing to our communities and partners to bring about love and change. Still, we hold in our hearts the weight of a world that grinds so many people down. It can be hard to see how our little efforts can change things. Yet, we also see that we are not the only ones who share this love and this hope. We can see neighbors who care for neighbors, ordinary people who become heroes in extraordinary circumstances, and quiet but persistent people who keep on passing words of justice and caring. In their stubborn commitment to what is right, we find our hope renewed. Through their witness and their work, may we remember that justice is not about winning quickly, but about showing up faithfully again and again. The myth of Pandora's box tells of how all the troubles of the world were let loose and flew out into the world, but after all of them were released, there was hope left in the box. Help us to understand that hope and action are partners. While the evils of this world fly with wings, our hope must have hands to work, and our prayers must have feet to walk. While storms of trouble may batter us, we can build communities and connections with these hands and feet that will last and pass on the message of hope to future generations. This service and Ed's theme that he told me of hope for the future and New Year's got me thinking about my life and how I look into the future. There's a curious bit of trivia for computer programmers that on many systems, time is measured not as year, month, day, or hours, but as just one number, which is the number of seconds since January 1st, 1970. That date is known as the epoch in programming circles. As it happens, I was born just 6 days later, so my time is my life has been a life of the epoch. And my son Milo was born in March 2000, just after the millennium. So for both of us, the decades of our lives correspond to the decades of our calendar. Myself from the epoch and him from the millennium. So it's an interesting way to reflect on how the decades have changed. I have no trouble seeing hopeful progress from when I was born. I was born in 1970. Nixon was president. The Cold War was on. The Vietnam War was raging. In the spring, the US began a bombing campaign in Cambodia, which killed many thousands and devastated the environment there with Agent Orange. At home, we had no EPA. Pesticides, including DDT, were used freely. Students protested across the nation about this, and in May, when I was still a baby, soldiers fired live rounds at student protesters in Ohio, killing 4 of them. In the wider world, even greater atrocities were happening: China's Cultural Revolution, Nigeria's Civil War, and all of the repression behind the Iron Curtain, which has changed a lot, even though the world has not gotten all that much better. It has. There are things which we can see as improvement. I have a little more trouble seeing progress from when my son was born in 2000. Clinton was president. We had wars and protests. LGBT rights were still on the horizon, but we've had a lot of backlash since then and new wars. Still, a year and a half ago, I was on a road trip with my son, moving him back to California from his grad school in Illinois. So we went across the country, and while we were in the car, he told me about Yuval Noah Harari's thesis about the horsemen of the apocalypse. That's the wrong page. In the book of Revelations in the Bible, the 4 horsemen are famine, plague, war, and death. These are pictured together historically because so many people died of hunger, of infectious disease and violence, and in those times, such that people were sure that that was how the world would end. In today's world, we're on the verge of taming those 3 horses. The leading causes of death today are heart disease, cancer, and accidents. We haven't done away with hunger or infectious disease or war, but they are far less destructive than they were. And I love that, not just for its message, but because my son told it to me. It helped me look at the bigger picture, that the future generations could see hope, even if we constantly look at headlines and see things that are bad. Real change does happen, but it happens like a river carving a canyon. Each drop may be small, and the change it makes can be hard to see, but over time it carves a whole new landscape. On the scale of civilizations, we have changed very fundamentally. At this moment, we have new problems like media addiction and climate change, but at least the taming of those horses shows that change is possible. In time, we will probably tame these problems and invent even yet new ones. But I still have hope because change is possible, that that these new problems can also be addressed. Each year we move into the future, and it brings new possibilities. We can be distracted by the latest awful media news story and outraged, but it isn't the bigger picture. The change to look for is the change that we are doing, day by day, person by person, and that adds up to years and decades and towns and countries. Thank you. Our next song is a unfamiliar one to the congregation. It's number 114, Through the Ages. You may probably be familiar with the tune, since it's the same as Onward Christian Soldiers. But the Unitarian priest wrote the lyrics for this as a response to Onward Christian Soldiers, that he saw that there was a moving forwards, that there was a change through the ages, but it would not come from soldiers, but from progress of activists like ourselves.
May the words of our mouths and the meditations of our heart be good for all of us. Many of you are thinking about New Year's resolutions, and there are going to be New Year's Eve parties, and we're planning what we're going to do for the coming year. So for this last Sunday in the church year, it seems like it might be a good time to think about time, the different ways we can look at time, and there are. It's a to me amazing concept to think about. For the simplest definition of time, it is the duration of an event, something that we measure with a metronome or some other measuring device to tick off the seconds or the minutes or the years, so we can measure time chronologically. But in early Greek thought, there was another notion about time, the kairos, not chronos, the kairos. That one spelled C-H-I-R-O-S, and kairos was the special time, like when the Christian Bible says the fullness of time, the time is coming or now is, or theologically or philosophically, but special moments in your life when time stops. It's the more important things are going on than the chronological measurement of time. And we will come back later in the sermon to talk about kairos as that kind of time. First, it will seem like a strange way to get into it, but I would like to talk about the longest measurement of time. Hanju and I share one thing in common. We are both amazed by many things we learn about cosmology and astronomy and physics, and the Milky Way you see is just one little galaxy, and there apparently could be tens of thousands or even hundreds of millions of these in the universe. And we now know that the universe is expanding, that these galaxies are moving, and they're moving at an increasingly rapid rate of speed. And you can know this because of the change in the light that they emit, the red light that they emit, and it can be measured, and it is. So it's not just cosmological speculation; it's a fact of astronomy or physics. And the times, the speed of light is something that's almost impossible for me or anybody else to understand the meaning of. When Einstein spoke of the space and time being of the same stuff, but when it comes more to Earth and people like us, we forget that kind of time, and we're looking at things that happened on the Earth that made time important. We know that our Earth maybe it's 13 million years old, and we know that early humanoids, hominoids appeared maybe 250,000 years ago, and finally, maybe it came about when humans, there were enough of them, and they developed the beginnings of agriculture, and they began to live in cities and communities, and major changes happened all around the world. That roughly 5,000 or 6,000 years ago, in China and India and many other places in the world, people began to develop explanations of what life was about. There was, in the same 500-year period, we had Gautama Buddha, we had the rise of Confucius in China, and of all places, we had the rise of various kinds of Greek philosophy, the beginnings of it. But the most unusual aspect of the development of time of all was what happened in a very unlikely place, what place we now call Palestine. And the early Jewish people contributed two things to our understanding of time, and they all have influenced Western culture, and they have influenced even the history of the Unitarian Church movement. The first was the rise of ethical prophets, ordinary people who would confront the king of that day or the priest or whatever, who were exploiting the poor, who were taking advantage of people. They directly confronted the most famous example of that when David was confronted by Nathan for his seducing Bathsheba and arranging for the killing of her husband Uriah the Hittite. And he was directly confronted, the king was, by a very ordinary person. And it throughout the Jewish Bible, and then into the Christian, you had the ordinary people confronting, demanding justice and fairness for usually meaning for the poor people being oppressed by those on top. The other thing is that the other contribution of those early Jewish people was a harder one to understand, but they had the notion that God was leading Israel through time. There was a time dimension that there was a beginning, and there was a coming together of the Jewish people, and they would be delivered from their enemies for keeping the covenant that God had made with them, and they believed that God would see them throughout a history, and as long as they were being oppressed by their enemies. And the example was one example was the building of the temple in 5 BCE, but before the current era. It was destroyed 100 years later and rebuilt, and the temple existed in Jerusalem until the year 70. Then it was destroyed by the Romans, and it hasn't been rebuilt. And so on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, starting around the year 800, the Islamic religion built several religious sanctuaries on the Temple Mount, the Dome of the Rock, a sacred place to people of Islamic faith. Third holiest site in Islam is now on the site where the Jewish temple was. We could have some concern about this because there are very few, but a few very Orthodox people who think God intends the Jewish temple to be back on the top of that Mount Zion in Jerusalem, and thankfully it's only a very small group of people, but the Muslims had those sanctuaries for more than 1,300 years. It's a long time. But the notion of God passing through time or time progressing became a feature even of Western philosophies, some Western philosophies, and it still is very much alive in denominations like the Seventh-day Adventists. About 20 years ago, I was visiting the Elmira Baptist Church in West Virginia, where I was from, and my grandfather was Squire Lee Vaughan. It was probably 80 years old then, and there were only about 25 people. It would be the most there ever would be at this little church. But they paused in the service and asked if anybody wanted to testify. And my grandfather said he was happy with his life, but he was waiting for the rapture. Waiting for the rapture. And the rapture is a notion in several places in the Christian Bible that Jesus is going to come back, and all the former people dead will be raised and the current people will gather together and be joined in heaven with the end of the world. The rapture would be the second coming of Jesus. Jewish people, think the Messiah hasn't come yet. They think Jesus was not the Christ. He was not the Messiah. It's not such a important notion in Israel, Judaism, as in many current popular Christian sects or right-wing political movements. But anyway, the notion of history having a time dimension moving forward is still a major thing in Western thought. Anyway, now what can we think about ourselves as individuals? Think with me about this for a moment. As you are sitting here and your heart is beating, biologically you are being propelled into your future. And insofar as you're awake, you're also being propelled into your future. For us, every moment is a movement of ourselves through our own personal histories. But you bring to this moment all the past baggage of your life, all the things that you've experienced, that you remember, all the things you inherit biologically and the things you learn socially. You bring it all to this present moment. But happily, our lives are not determined by our past. We bring the past into the present, but we have this marvelous thing that developed maybe 3,000 or 4,000 years ago, that we're able to look at ourselves. We're able to make ourselves an object of scrutiny. Are we happy with ourselves, and how could we be better? Maybe a New Year's resolution would do it, but we are continually being confronted with the decisions in our future, and we have the ability to weigh them to see which ones will help us or our neighbors or make life more interesting, make life more worth living. That is, the way I look at it, I've studied it, is about the experience of, we feel like we're free to make decisions, and some people think much more about the decisions than others do, but we have that possibility. So hopefully with the new year, all of us will be thinking of new possibilities that will make our lives more interesting. And what do we have to help us make these decisions? We have each other in our families and in this community of people as other people we know and work with. I want to wish you all a happy new year and join together with singing the final hymn, 1064.